Deeply divided about his policies. Republicans are vowing no cooperation. So what's ahead? Michael Isikoff is senior investigative reporter with Newsweek and MSNBC contributor. Matt Lewis is a blogger and a columnist with politicsdaily.com. Matt, let me begin with you. Do you see, for instance, health care reform as still being the primary issue that people want to talk about when they're going to the polls in November?
I think it's going to be a big factor. I think that in terms of motivating Republicans to turn out, remember, this is a midterm election, so it's about turnout. It's about which base is the most motivated to show up. So health care will play a big role in terms of getting Republicans to the polls. But I think in terms of persuading voters, sort of middle-of-the-road voters, it's going to be the economy, and the economy.
What we saw in a couple recent appearances from President Obama talking about health care, even after it was passed into law, was that he was getting up on his soapbox and he was starting to sound either more like a politician campaigning or a revival preacher up in the podium. Let me ask you, Michael, today we saw him down in Charlotte, North Carolina, when he was asked about whether taxes would go up in response to the health care reform bill. He gave a long professorial explanation of how health care would work. Which approach works best for President Obama?
Thank you so much.
Well, look, I certainly agree that the economy is what the White House is going to be focused on. But I do have to take a little bit issue with the introduction that some of these issues that you mentioned are in his rearview mirror. Let's take the surge in Afghanistan, for example. He made some very tough decisions a few months back to implement the surge. But whether it's going to be a success or not, and whether he's going to be able to stick to the plan, especially with some of the recent problems he's been having with the Karzai government, this is going to be an agonizing issue for the administration on the foreign policy front for quite some time. There are other big foreign policy issues that he's got to be confronting coming up. Sanctions against Iran. He had promised them by the end of the year. We haven't seen them yet. They're trying desperately to get this UN resolution. It's not clear whether they're going to get it. So a lot of these issues on the foreign policy are still going to be confronting the Obama presidency, and even health care and some of the other accomplishments that they've had. There's implementation, and there's a lot of ferment to come on all these fronts.
All right, let's talk about the environment, because we just saw a big turnaround from President Obama and the administration on drilling offshore. It's created a lot of controversy this week among Obama's base, and even some staunch conservatives aren't that happy about it, because they say it doesn't go far enough. It really doesn't open up that much new territory to oil exploration. Where are we when it comes to our nation's stand here, Matt, on the environment, clean energy, and whether he gets any bipartisan cooperation from Republicans on that front?
Well, look, I think part of the problem with the way that they shoved health care through, in the sense that no Republicans supported it, they passed it, through reconciliation, that it sort of poisoned the well. And so you have Republicans like Lindsey Graham, for example, who might have been willing and interested in working with Democrats across the aisle to pass things, are now hesitant. And they may actually, for personal reasons, feeling like they've been slighted, have a hard time working with Democrats. So although President Obama has this accomplishment, as Michael was saying, there are long-term implications, and so healthcare, in a sense, is not behind him. It still impacts everything.
Well, that's true. That's true on jobs too, because even when it comes to clean energy, Jesse Jackson was pointing out to me this week, Michael, that transit jobs, which have been cut, are actually green jobs. If you've got 60 people riding the bus, that's 60 cars that aren't on the road. Where does the president go from here, moving toward, for instance, saving those kinds of jobs?
Well, look, they are going to be trying to get this climate change legislation through. That's one of the high items on the agenda. And I think some of the pronouncements that we've seen, like the oil drilling this week, was designed to do that, to try to get Republican support for climate change. But it's not clear that he's going to be able to do that. There's still some bumpy waters ahead. And if you look at the polls, by the way, I think they were hoping for a bigger bounce from health care legislation than they got. Some of the numbers are not very encouraging for the White House this week. So this is still a very choppy waters for the Democrats going into this election.
So, Matt, I got to leave it there. We'll expect to see President Obama, I guess, more on these visits on the topics to come. Thank you.